Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. If you've ever looked around and felt like the whole financial system is just this massively rigged game, well, you're not exactly wrong. Today, we're going to take all those intimidating, kind of invisible financial forces operating around us every single day and completely demystify them. By the time we're done here, we're going to transform those mysterious mechanics into highly practical, real-world tools you can actually use to build long-term wealth.
To get us there, we've broken this massive topic down into a really structured masterclass. We'll kick things off with the price of civilization, move right into how banks really work, look at the double-edged sword, talk about when the economy shifts, and finally, we'll wrap up with the ultimate wealth hack.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the price of civilization.
So, picture this. Imagine you just wrapped up a grueling month at work, slaving away, flipping burgers at your local McDonald's. You're chilling in bed, your phone buzzes, and boom, it's an email notification saying you've been paid a solid $2,000. Awesome, right? But then you actually log into your bank account and you see a totally different number, $1,456. Ouch. This right here is the modern everyday ritual of surrendering a huge chunk of your hard-earned cash to invisible forces. Now, these invisible forces, they're really what we call the cost of civilization. Basically, these are the mandatory fees we all pay so the government can actually function. Build roads, fund schools, make sure your favorite late-night taco truck isn't overrun with rats, or, send billion-dollar missiles across the globe. And these taxes, they attack your money at all different stages. Income tax, that hits you right when you earn it. Sales tax, bam, hits you when you spend it. Capital gains tax hits the money your investments make while you're literally sleeping. And then you've got Social Security, which is essentially the government forcing you to save for your own retirement, and Medicare, which helps support older folks or people dealing with serious health issues. Honestly, filing taxes can feel like a totally terrifying guessing game, where if you guess wrong, you're kind of cooked. But generally speaking, higher tax rates do tend to correlate with a higher quality of life.
Okay, moving on to part two, how banks really work. Before we can even start to truly understand banks, we have to ask a fundamental, maybe slightly absurd question about the actual currency you deposit. Seriously, think about it. What makes a dollar bill any different from a random stick you'd find on the ground?
Well, the weird truth is, money isn't actually real. The only real difference between a dollar bill and that stick is societal agreement. Currency is literally just a social construct. It's built entirely on this shared belief in trust. We all just collectively agree that a piece of paper can buy a coffee and a stick can't. It's carefully regulated by the government and central banks to make sure we don't print too much, which would instantly turn our cash into worthless monopoly money, or too little, which would just mean absolutely nobody could afford to live.
So keeping that shared trust in mind, what actually happens when you slide your money over to a bank teller? Now, most people, they picture banks as this massive, impenetrable safe, like a dragon fiercely guarding your cash in a deep underground vault. But here's the crucial thing to realize. Your bank is actually just a middleman. They use this system called fractional reserve banking, and it relies on one very simple, kind of brilliant idea. Not every single customer is going to show up at the exact same time demanding 100% of their cash back. Well, unless it's a massive financial crisis like 2008, obviously.
Let's see how this actually plays out in practice. When you deposit $1,000, that money absolutely does not just sit there gathering dust. The bank holds on to a required, surprisingly tiny fraction of it, and then they immediately turn right around and lend out $900 of your money to some guy who really wants to buy a jet ski. You provide the supply of money, the guy buying the jet ski is the demand, and the bank gets to act as the incredibly profitable matchmaker sitting right in the middle.
Which brings us to part three, the double-edged sword.
So interest. Interest is essentially just money's way of charging rent to exist in someone else's hands. If you borrow money, well, it's the price tag. If you're saving it, it's your reward for being patient and, let's face it, kind of boring. But listen, not all interest is created equal. Simple interest is just a flat fee. It's like a thanks for playing charge. Compound interest, on the other hand, that is a totally different beast. That's where every dollar you have gets clones, and then those clones decide they also want to charge rent. Say you're investing at a solid 7% annual compound interest rate. Your money literally starts duplicating itself. $100 becomes $200, then $400, until one day you wake up older, richer, and maybe a little smug about the whole thing.
But wait, because compound interest really is a double-edged sword. If you happen to be on the wrong side of it, let's say you're paying a brutal 20% interest on a credit card, it is an absolute disaster.
You miss one payment, and suddenly your interest starts earning its own interest. No joke, that is exactly how a quick $12 late-night burrito mutates into a $50 financial regret. It is this vicious slow burn that can turn tiny everyday mistakes into raging financial fires.
And you know what shadowy algorithm actually decides your fate here? It's your credit score. This little 3-digit number literally dictates if you can get a house, buy a car, or if you're going to be stuck with a soul-crushing 27% rate on a new TV. It's calculated based on stuff like your payment history, how much credit you actually use, and how long you've had those accounts open. If your score is under 580, to lenders, you are a walking, talking red flag. But if you can step over that 750 mark, suddenly you're sparkling with adult credibility. Honestly, your credit score is kind of like a well-trained pet dog. If you completely ignore it, it's going to make an absolute mess of your life. But if you take care of it, it might just help you buy a house. You really have to learn the rules of this rigged game so you can rig it right back in your own favor.
All right, let's shift gears to part 4, when the economy shifts.
Have you ever popped open a bag of chips, realized it's mostly just air, and then remembered you paid like 30% more for it this time than you did last year? Well, my friend, you have just been hit by inflation. Inflation is basically the slow, quiet erosion of your money's value. I mean, a $5 bill is still technically a $5 bill, but it buys you way less gas and significantly fewer instant noodles than it used to. So what actually causes this? Sometimes it's just high demand, like everyone has cash burning a hole in their pocket and 2,000 people want a TV, but there are only 1,000 TVs available. Boom, the business raises the price. Other times, it's supply chain hiccups that just make producing things way more expensive. And sometimes, it's literally just human expectation. If we all think prices are going to go up, we rush out and buy things right now, which, ironically, is exactly what drives the prices up even faster. Now, a little tiny bit of inflation, say around 2%, is totally normal. But when it aggressively spikes, your savings basically die on the vine and your wages get left in the dust. Now, to fight off this high inflation, the government usually steps in and raises interest rates, which makes it a lot more expensive for us to borrow money. Suddenly, people stop buying those TVs, and that cools off the whole economy. But sometimes they cool it off a little too much, and that triggers a recession. The easiest way to think of the economic cycle is like a massive party. In the boom phase, everybody is dancing, the drinks are flowing, and you eventually hit the peak. But then comes the bust. The lights flicker on, reality hits hard, layoffs start happening, and suddenly the DJ is just playing sad lo-fi beats about corporate downsizing. It's rough. But remember, recessions aren't forever. They are painful, sure, but they're necessary resets. Eventually, the government lowers rates again, spending returns, and economic growth starts right back up.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, the ultimate wealth hack.
Okay, so real wealth generation actually starts with this totally fascinating concept about value. Imagine you just pick up a regular old rock from your driveway. It's worth absolutely nothing, right? Now imagine picking up a really shiny yellow rock. Boom, that's gold. But is the gold inherently, practically better? Not really. It's just much rarer, so as humans, we place a massively higher perceived value on it. And if you can really wrap your head around this, you can become rich. Because if you can figure out how to provide massive value to society, you will earn massive amounts of money. It's exactly why Steve Jobs made billions inventing the iPhone, and why a brain surgeon takes home a lot more than a cashier. Heck, it's even why luxury brands like Gucci can get away with selling a handbag for 100 times the price of a standard bag from Target. If you can crack the code on how to create value, or even just perceived value, the sky is literally the limit.
But here's the kicker. Just earning money isn't enough. Why? Because as we talked about earlier, inflation is out there quietly trying to steal your future. You have got to put that money to work. Instead of constantly trading your time for a paycheck, you have to start trading your money for more money through investing. You can buy stocks, which are basically just tiny little ownership slices of real companies. You can buy bonds, which is essentially you loaning your money out to someone else in exchange for interest. You could go with funds, which conveniently bundle all these things together so you don't have to stress about picking them one by one. Or you can dive into real estate, picking up property that someone else literally pays you to live in. Now, does investing come with risk? Oh, for sure. The markets are going to go up and they're going to go down. But the real danger isn't losing some money, it's never actually investing it in the first place.
Which brings us right to our final and honestly most powerful point of all. Time is the single most valuable asset in the entire world. Look at most truly wealthy people. They didn't win the lottery, they didn't have some secret magic spell, they simply let compound growth do its thing for 30 solid years. Money that just sits quietly in an investment account multiplies. It happens slowly at first, but then it grows incredibly fast. True wealth isn't built in days, it is built in decades.
That ordinary, everyday person who ends up retiring with 7 figures didn't somehow beat the system, they just understood the system and used it. So now you know the invisible forces at play. You know the rules of the game. But the clock is ticking right now. So, what exactly is your money doing for you today, and what are you going to do about it tomorrow?